Hey everybody! Welcome to Friday the 13th, the series. I'm your producer, Robert.
And I'm your guest, Joe Slepsky.
And after a complete, spoiler-filled recap of the episode, we are going to discuss the show you either just learned existed or always wondered how it existed. We promise the answers will be few and far between because we're just here to have some goofity fun exploring a show that, despite or possibly even because of its faults, isn't good and isn't so bad it's good, but is still somehow oddly charming. Let's dive in, shall we? Thanks for joining Joe and I one last time as we wrap up Friday the 13th, the series, episode 18, Brain Drain. Not gonna lie, we don't talk about the show once. We discuss Will Eisner's work on The Spirit. Joe hosts a masterclass on the tenets of comic book pacing. At one point, he heroically attempts to steer the show back to the topic of Friday, and you won't believe what we end up discussing instead. In fact, go ahead, take a moment to think it over. Any guesses? Well, you're wrong. But if you guessed kaiju, partial credit. Fear not, between our rambling tangents, I do finish my cheeky synopsis of the most tragic episode to date. But first, more bashing of hardcore MAGA G.I. Joe fans. Seriously, if anyone you know has been exposed to MAGA G.I. Joe ideology, seek help immediately. It's never too late to save a life. If you'd like to watch Friday the 13th, the series, along with us, it's getting harder, but I'm working on a long-term solution. And episode 18 is available on the Inner Demon Entertainment website until Paramount inevitably files a complaint with YouTube. So check it out while you can. I promise it'll be like nothing you've ever seen before. Unless you watch the show. Then it'll be like that.
The lessons of G.I. Joe were inclusivity, helping your neighbor, being generous with your resources,
Standing up for what's right.
standing up for marginalized people,
Protecting the weak.
walking into a room and going, "You're picking on that guy, let's not do this." And somehow, the people that grew up on that didn't learn any of those lessons. And now they're still like, we love G.I. Joe, but man, we love our Trump too. And they don't see any disconnect there. It's like the lessons they learned from it was simply guns go bang and guns are good and guns are tough.
Well, that's the rub when it comes to humans, Joe. You can watch G.I. Joe as a child and reach the conclusion Cobra were the good guys.
That's exactly it. They're like Cobra was fighting against the system.
They had the better weapons, the sexier outfits.
So we did that, Frost Nixon. Probably had I found like an authentic super British dude to play David Frost, it probably would have hit better, to be fair. It's funny because in the show, Destro was played by an African-American, Arthur Burkhart. He didn't realize the guy was Scottish. He just played him with this big booming Arthur Burkhart voice. So when we do my show, I'm like, I can't even try to emulate that Arthur Burkhart sound. Like, I don't even want to try. So I go super Scottish, and I went right to my friend Scott, who's straight up literally from Scotland and just got the thickest, greatest Scottish accent.
Oh, it's got to be amazing.
Oh, it's great. Yeah. So I'm talking to this real Scottish person. I'm like, layer it, just make it thick, make it so I'm going to have to put subtitles on this. And then me, Chicago guy, doing a weak sauce British dude.
Is that the one you think you're most proud of?
No, I'm most proud of Columbo. I think Frost Nixon is the most underrated one because you have to both know the whole Frost Nixon stuff, and then you got to deal with the Chicago guy with the British accent.
I'm saying that when the hard master does it, it's not illegal.
I absolutely use that line.
It's a deep cut.
In the cartoon, they stormed the Capitol. And this was written after January 6th. I'm like, Destro, you sent Cobra troops to the Capitol. You don't see that as an illegal insurrection? He's like, well, when I do it, it's not illegal. But in a Scottish accent. I think Columbo is I'm most proud of because I think I flexed not only being able to write a G.I. Joe cartoon episode, which is a very specific beat, but also a Columbo episode, which is also a very specific beat.
When I picture the Venn diagram overlap between those two, I'm not seeing a lot of contact, Joe. So if you could thread that needle, I am impressed, sir.
If I had $1 million, I would animate that tomorrow, and I think it would be the funniest thing you've ever seen. I wish I did them more frequently, but they take a lot out of me. It's a few months worth of work. Most of that is writing it, and then it's about a month to record everything. But most of it is me going back and forth and beating up ideas because it needs to feel authentic to my voice and my show.
Absolutely.
After Columbo, a lot of people were like, what if Knight Rider crossed over or this whatever crossover? And those are absolutely brilliantly funny ideas. But my brain was like, I don't want to do that. I'd love to do an A-Team crossover. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Because I love Mr. T. I found a way to use Mr. T in the holiday special.
Joe, stop drilling. You've struck oil. The moment this is over, I'm going to your back catalog and checking these out.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
How did those go over with your fans?
The first one I did was Cold Slither, and that went over huge.
Makes sense.
That one was genuinely 6 months of work. The writing was a lot, but then I contracted a real band to really record versions of that. And every time I'd have an idea in writing it, I'm like, well, this character would be fun to throw in there. I'm like, that's another person. So we had like 17 different actors.
Wow.
And I cast as authentically as possible. I think I only used like 2 impersonations of accents. Otherwise, I was like, I need an Australian. Ross Fisher Davis plays Buzzer, and he's literally from the same part of England that Buzzer's from. I'm looking at the file card. I'm like, holy shit, that's exactly where Buzzer's from. Like, you're in. You're doing this.
Only in LA can you make that happen.
That put me on the map. A lot of people didn't even know who I was, so that got shared a lot because it was a pretty fresh idea. Columbo went over well. I think that surprised people. Brought in some new listeners I know, like Columbo listeners came in and joined.
No kidding.
Strangely, our Christmas special went over a little quieter, but I think that's because that's an idea that's not super original. It was inspired by the Star Wars holiday special. There's not a lot of Star Wars references, but the framework of it is based on that. So even that's not even super original. But a friend reached out with that idea, and I'm like, that's a great idea, because I'd never seen anyone do that for G.I. Joe. But I've seen people do that for other things. Even G.I. Joe has a holiday special. So I get why that one didn't blow up.
And are these all friends of yours, or do you hold casting calls?
They're mostly friends. I do cast based on suggestions, but I can honestly say I've never said no to anyone's suggestion because I just love meeting people and working with people. One of my dreadnoughts, he was a recommendation. They're like, he's Australian, he's an actor. I go, done. Derek Lamont, who just was a guest on my show, I've seen him act. I know he's a great actor. And I just went, I want you in the show. I'm going to make you the lead of this Christmas thing. You know, his voice wasn't really close to what Alpine was, but I don't go for that. I go more for who is my Alpine? Who am I doing? And he was such a great fit, and he killed it. Having said that, I do have some people that do pitch in and they can do a variety of things. My friend Doug Erholtz is a cartoon voice actor. He's a wonderful dude.
I figured there had to be at least 1 or 2 voice actors in your crew.
He was my Columbo. I didn't even know if he could do one, but just based on his job, I said, Doug, I'm assuming you can do Peter Falk.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, yeah, I'll figure it out. And I was like, okay. And so he goes, give me a month. And a month later, he sends me this MP3 and it's amazing, Peter Falk. And I'm just like, of course you could do that. Because I needed a good Falk. I couldn't do Falk. I couldn't carry that for the whole show.
Sure.
He crushed it. And so then when I needed a Bob Hope for the Christmas one, I just assumed Doug could do a Bob Hope. And he crushed it because he's a talent.
You got some jokes about hippies, right? You'll be fine.
My friend Mark Sogalis, he's not an actor whatsoever. He's a high school buddy of mine. I mean, he may have acted. I don't want to take that from him.
We're all actors at heart.
But he's a high school buddy of mine. He's living in the suburbs, raising his kids, you know, doing his thing. But he just loved these shows and stuff. So I was like, I need like someone to do 2 lines for Major Blood. Can you do like a New Zealand kind of a thing? And he's like, yeah. He did so great. Major Blood's the lead bad guy in the Christmas one. So I reached out to Mark and I'm like, can you handle that? Because it's a lot. You're the bad guy. And he crushed it. He's not quote unquote an actor, but he did so good.
I want to carve out one little moment here just to talk to the folks at home who might be interested in getting into creative projects.
Yeah.
One thing I found directing shorts and web series and that kind of stuff is that you really can moneyball it to some degree. You don't always need Gary Oldman.
Yeah.
It depends on the project and it depends on the role and all that. But if you have good communication with a person within the Venn diagram of possibilities that would work, they don't all have to be the best, quote, actors in the world, or even the most charismatic people. Sometimes you can just take an old buddy that you just know is going to be perfect for a role, put them in there, and they do in fact work. And more in the sphere of actors, you can take people that wouldn't necessarily be your top choice, but as long as you have the time to work on it with them, you have good communication, you can get them to a place that they might not have been able to get to on their own and arrive at a conclusion that you're all happy with.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Part of the reason, quote, professional actors are used, yes, it's their talent and their training and even their personal charisma, good looks, all that stuff. But some of it's because film shoots very quickly because it is very expensive. I'm talking movies, TV, commercials, doesn't really matter. But the point is you need someone who is going to show up on time, know their lines, knock it out of the park, That's why you go to certain people again and again and again, and they become famous and they become the same people that everyone wants to use. You can just plunk them in and feel confident that you're going to get the product you need. But again, maybe you don't have a lot of money, but as long as you have a little more time and you're a reasonable person and you have decent communication skills, you can get a great performance out of someone who's not necessarily a professional actor or an actor at all.
You're totally right. I dislike the phrase, it's who you know, because it is who you know. But for most of us working stiffs, and I don't even work in quote unquote in Hollywood, it's who you know because you yourself are reliable. What you just described, you start working with the same people, it's because you're good to work with, you're fun to work with, you show up on time, you know your lines.
You create a safe environment where people can explore.
Right, so that other people can get their jobs done without having to worry about you doing your job. So suddenly that becomes a who you know situation because, oh, he's worked with him for years, he knows him really well, so he keeps hiring him. Well, no, originally, they didn't know each other like that. Originally, they were just two actor dudes who did a thing together, and they both showed up and they both had their stuff prepped. And then the next project, you get cast in something and like, man, we really need a 6'3" bald Polish guy from Chicago for this. And you're like, well, I know Joe and we've worked together before. And last time he was super prepared. And they're like, well, give him a call. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got to be someone who's dependable. Sure. Are there instances of nepotism and all that stuff? 100%. It's in every occupation. The problem is when you talk about entertainment, it's a lot more obvious because their talents are then on display for the world to see. And you're like, that actor, actress, whoever is not very good. They definitely got this job because it was a favor.
We don't know if someone's nephew in a giant widget factory is any better than anyone else would have been in that role.
My dad was a proud sprinkler fitter for many years. He worked in the union and still is. But to get in the union, there's a lot of family and friends in there. How many times do we just accept my whole family are Irish and they're all cops? That's the same thing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, my foot's going to get in the door because that's what my parents did for their occupation.
At a certain level, it's almost necessity. I mean, if you go back to like medieval times, I make a decent living as a blacksmith, so come hell or high water, my son's going to be a blacksmith.
All of our surnames mean son of blacksmith.
Professions, very common, at least in the West.
Son of the cobbler, so you're the cobble sons. I rebel against the stigma of that. And it makes it harder for new people to break in. 100% absolutely does. But that's what life is. What were we talking about again? Friday the 13th, the movie, the TV series. So listen, if my dad was Jason, I'd make an insanely great Jason. I would be murdering people left and right. I think that's why our serial killers typically just murder people. They don't murder them and have romantic lives, because then we'd be dealing with son of Jason and son of Freddy. We only deal with Dracula's sons and Frankenstein's sons.
Aristocracy like Dracula or giant lizards like Godzilla.
Oh man, imagine if Michael Myers is also out there getting it wet. There'd be so many kid Michael Myers' kid shapes running around.
Well, I've mentioned before to my friends that I want to see an alternate universe where Toho Studios ran the Friday the 13th franchise. So Jason goes from being a killer in the first one to saving Earth from aliens in later ones to being on an island with all the other serial killers to finally having a son.
I love that. Do you know about the Japanese Frankenstein movies?
Yes. Godzilla fights Frankenstein.
He never did fight Frankenstein.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting mixed up.
No, but Frankenstein did show up in those monster movies. It's how he fought King Kong.
But they somehow found a way to incorporate electricity into Kong.
It was supposed to be King Kong versus Frankenstein.
Yes.
And then they couldn't use Frankenstein. So then they used Godzilla.
To a man with a Godzilla, every problem looks like a nail.
I might be flipping that. It might have been supposed to be Godzilla versus Frankenstein, and then they got rid of Frankenstein. Either way.
I feel like it might have been that one. Quick shout out to the podcast, Two Black Guys Talk Godzilla.
Yeah, Godzilla was the start, and they were going to pair him up against Frankenstein. And their idea was that Frankenstein would get hit by nuclear stuff like Godzilla and a ton of electricity. That's why when King Kong hits electricity, he gets super, super strong. It's because that was just the idea for Frankenstein.
Yeah, insanity.
But they eventually do use the Frankenstein monster, but it wasn't against Godzilla. It was against like some other Gorgo beast or something like that. And it's like a 2-story, 3-story tall Frankenstein. So you're onto something is what I'm saying.
Oh, thank you, Joe. I appreciate that.
And by Frankenstein, I know we all mean Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah, internet pedants. You know exactly what Joe means. Don't be a Frankenstein's dad, to quote the System Mastery guys. Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn, has presumably employed Dr. Rhodes' intelligence over the commercial break because he appears to test the gorilla brain in goo. I really hope this isn't your first episode of the podcast. By reciting, to which the gorilla brain is heard to retort, so now we have an ersatz Rosetta Stone and know the gorillan word for please kill me. Really, Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn? That's the extent of your linguistics test. Just a sound. You don't want to make sure it can speak even one complete word. It's going to be an awfully short presentation to the science community. I say this as a friend, but I feel like you're setting yourself up for failure. There must be a union rule in Canada you don't have to pay a voice actor for sounds, just dialogue. Fun fact, in the voice acting world, human sounds, such as grunting, laughing, snoring, etc., are referred to as efforts. I must reluctantly amend my previous statement to Joe about Dennis Forrest playing his role differently after each trephination, because Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn, mysteriously draws the line at expressing any of Dr. Rhodes' traits or mannerisms or sartorial choices. So, sorry ladies, but this was the 80s. No girls allowed. Ryan the Lion raises the rolling shutter they heard before the break. So I guess, despite metahuman levels of intelligence by this point, Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn, just plumb forgot to lock it. Or maybe it was hubris. Sure, let's go with that. As Jack and Mickey carry in Dr. Rhodes, Jack states the obvious, that they need to find Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn. I would posit that you actually need to find the Treffinator, unless you intend to make Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn, show you where it is and or how it works, but Ryan renders that point moot with the rhetorical gem,
it could be anywhere.
Yes, he could. But chances are, he's in his science office, doing science, right? That or the restroom. But he strikes me as a hold it at work kind of guy. Turns out, I wasn't far off, con respecto, Jack's plan for Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn. I don't know if he plans on forcing him to lead them, but he does intend to follow him to the Treffinator. I feel like that noble goal is going to devolve into forcing, read punching, pretty quickly, but perhaps Jack's better angels will prevail. Wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't stop to heap kudos upon the director and camera department for pulling off a truly elegant, long take with excellent blocking, compositions, and a dolly move that follows our heroes descending the stairs, crossing the basement, and settling a dying Dr. Rhodes into a temporary resting place. Only now does Jack instruct Mickey and Ryan to go back upstairs to check the office. So why did they come down to the... forget about it. When that request elicits the non sequitur from Ryan,
You're willing to kill Pangborn?
I really wish Jack's response would have been, whoa, hey, where did that come from? It's alarming you went there. And now, visual proof this series occasionally bit off more than it could chew. I'm certain for reasons of limited time and budget, Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn, strolls right past where Jack and Dr. Rhodes should currently be huddled. I can only imagine how angry the editor was when he realized they filmed Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn, strolling through the exact same section of the basement for no reason except to establish that he isn't in his office, and that he would have no choice but to insert this shot right here. And the real bag over the head punch in the face is that it is total padding and only here so the episode meets its runtime. It's okay, Gary L. Smith, it's not your fault. Well, even though Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn, just walked within 10 feet of him, Jack now sets off to find him. Bursting into the office, Jack finds no one, including Mickey and Ryan. So where the hell did they go? Why is this museum suddenly the Santa Cruz mystery spot? Indifferent to the howled lamentations of a gorilla brain in a fish tank, let's be honest, Jack has seen stranger, he searches the office and finds a Luger? Maybe? Man, Dr. Werner is a true dyed-in-the-wool German. Dude probably bleeds brewer's malt. You know, we're all having fun here. Maybe we don't go digging any deeper into this German scientist's secret files? Now, in the exact same doorway Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn, walked through a moment ago, that pesky guard appears in a cunning reverse Deus Ex Machina and orders Mickey and Ryan against the wall. Then, in the exact same location, Jack and Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn, finally confront each other. Okay, yes, they're reusing their limited space, and we're supposed to suspend our disbelief and pretend these are all different sections of the basement. Obviously. But the spirit of my argument stands. I've spent this whole episode feeling like I'm trapped in the back rooms because of the broken geography of this museum's sublevels. In fact, not just the sublevels. I refer you to my earlier comment about how Dr. Werner teleported from the basement to the mezzanine before Father Karasing down the lobby's stairs. Jack pulls the gun, Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn, flees, and with no good way to explain how he escapes, we cut to a close-up of his feet as he executes some real Arthur Murray footwork. Maybe it's a teleportation ritual or opens a wormhole to navigate this non-Euclidean basement? Well, it worked because Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn, not only ends up behind Jack, he manages to hold a straight razor to his neck as well. Hey, Friday, you established a stiletto-esque nail file earlier. Kinda feels like you're leaving money on the table. If you want proof there's no God, check out what happens next. When Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn, reveals, for some reason, he knows Jack well because he trephinated Dr. Rhodes, Jack attempts to turn the table by pointing out she wouldn't shoot him. A cunning gambit, to be sure. Ball's in your court, Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn.
Is that what you think? Pity. Hearing a prowler, I elected to defend the museum's property.
So, to paraphrase Mystery Science Theater, we now return you to non sequitur theater. That doesn't address Jack's premise at all. Not even close. And Canada thinks you can commit murder to protect property? Well, intentional or not, you just confirmed this series is set in Texas. Oh, but we're not done. That was just the aperitif and entree, maybe the fish course at most. The main occurs now when the still rambling Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn, is bowled over when Dr. Rhodes emerges from the shadows to pinball off Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn, then Jack, then collapse off screen. Jack just kind of ignores her to wrestle for the gun. Fair. With Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn, in a rear chokehold, Jack threatens,
I'll break your back!
What? His back? Friday, you never cease to give me something I've honestly never encountered before. Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn, reveals the trephinator, and it's once again under a tarp. My patience for your dramatic flair has run its course, young man. Conversely, Chris Wiggins' dramatic flair is on full display as he screams at Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn, to explain how to operate the chair. It's a side of the character we've never seen, and is so well executed it masks the absurd premise on display. Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn, makes a statement that almost forces me to retract what I said earlier vis-a-vis finding the trephinator instead of Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn, and Ryan jumping to the conclusion murder must be on the table. The characters all assumed a course of action I did, in fact, need spelled out in dialogue. The only way to save Dr. Rhodes is to engage in reverse trephination, which will require someone to die. I can't believe I now have to quote Professor Frink to defend my inability to reach this conclusion on my own. But the sad truth is, reverse trephination is a concept so ridiculous it makes me want to laugh out loud, in short. Hi. I guess we're meant to understand, even though there are currently 4 intelligences in the Harry vessel, even though the Harry intelligence seems to dominate all, even though no trace of Dr. Rhodes appears present, a reverse trephination will reset everything to episodic television square one. Yes, it's a painfully obvious solution I grossly overthought. Now let's all just move on with our lives. His patience gone, Jack and Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn, destroy a dozen priceless artifacts over the course of a wide-shot-only wrestling match that conveniently results in Jack's hood being pulled over his head to hide the stuntman I'm almost certain replaced him. Jack knocks Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn, out with the arm of the trephinator itself, and what are the odds? He happens to tumble back into the chair, then Dr. Rhodes, despite being at death's door, despite seemingly with closed eyes, both arms the trephinator, then activates it. With no one on the opposite side, the needle shatters the office window and plunges deep into the gorilla brain, which is now channeled into Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn, apparently overriding all other intelligence, and I do mean all, because he doesn't even appear as smart as an average gorilla. I have no idea how that brain was going to create artificial intelligence. It seems like it would have made far more sense for his intelligence to be transferred into the gorilla brain, and I suspect that only didn't happen because they painted themselves into a corner through a combination of geography and the wonky design of the Treffinator. It looks like that gorilla wasn't even smart enough to perform the body's autonomic functions, because Harry, aka Dr. Pangborn, definitely appears dead. Directly beneath him, Jack cradles a dying Dr. Rhodes to his chest, resulting in a totem pole blocking that's the most Byzantine image I've ever seen on network television. If you like the horror genre as much as we do, you can preview the horror comic book Requiem for a Psychopath right now for free at the Inner Demon Entertainment website. Imagine a world in which horror film slashers are real. Then imagine a troubled teen bringing one out of retirement to help him take revenge on his bullies. It was written by me and drawn by friend of the show, Stephen Yu. Again, that's Requiem for a Psychopath on the Inner Demon Entertainment website. And if you dig it, please either review and rate it 5 stars on Amazon, or don't rate and review it at all. Ratings of less than 5 stars send the algorithm into murder mode for some reason. Thanks. I hope you enjoy it. What other advice would you give to creatives, specifically probably regarding podcasting?
I've actually helped a lot of people start podcasts, and I've helped even more people not start a podcast. And I'm more proud of the not ones.
Interesting.
I've been doing podcasts for like 14 years. I do my own podcast for 10, but I was a producer on other podcasts. So I've been in that world for a long time.
Since you broached that subject, quick tangent to my own question, and this is terrible interview technique for all you people at home. Just to clarify, you did have podcasts before Joe on Joe, or was that your first?
Joe and Joe's the first one I was on mic for, but I was a producer for a podcast called Storyworthy, which is still going, which is wonderful. I then produced the Don't Tell My Mother podcast, which was a live show. I produced a podcast that my wife and her friend Amy did called More Than a Mouthful.
Wow, you produced a podcast for your own wife, and you're still married. Fantastic.
Yes, I know, right? And I helped you. I gave you some pointers when you first started going.
I almost brought it up, but I'm trying not to cut you off and bombard you with too many questions or tangents.
So the way my brain works is we all have a million great ideas, and some are great. Some are really, really great. But you have to find the right venue for them. I've had so many people come up to me and be like, oh, yeah, here's an idea for a podcast. And I'm like, that's pretty funny. And then we sit down and break it down. I'm like, all right, so what are you going to do in like week 2 or week 3? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. So go back to the drawing board.
It's the famous, I have an idea for a screenplay.
Yes.
Oh, that does sound cool. So what happens in the story? Story.
Totally. What engine are you building?
Right.
You build an engine, and then someone on the show has to drive the car. So one of the hosts has to propel the show forward and keep the show moving. And that's very cookie cuttery of me. There is absolutely room out there for different types of shows and different styles of podcasting, so to speak.
Sure, some can be more structured, some looser.
Totally. Mine's super not structured. I've never written a podcast script. I've been on shows where there are straight up scripts. And that's cool too. It works for whatever your creativity is. But what they all have in common is they have an engine that propels them from week to week. That's the biggest thing if you're thinking about getting into the podcast game, is what's going to keep me coming to the microphone week on week. If you're not into it, the audience will hear it.
If you're not having fun, your audience isn't having fun.
Yes. My show, the engine was built around watching episodes of the cartoon. I didn't have scripts, but it was definitely a format. So I was able to follow that for about 150 some episodes. And then we ran out of episodes. And so I realized I need to come up with a new format if I want to keep doing it. So I came up with a new format. And so my show changed. I started reviewing the issues of the comics. To be fair, it got a little rote. It was 155 issues to review. And I can do it. But every episode is going to be very similar. And I couldn't do it with a customer, with a guest.
Well, a little Freudian slip there.
Yeah, I couldn't do it with a guest because just the format that I built was very centered around me and my knowledge. And I love that format. But 155 episodes of that is a lot.
We can't all have your deep knowledge of G.I. Joe.
Appreciate it or not, whatever. But that was the format I built from it. So I did that. And then I had to take a little hiatus because I was like, even I'm exhausted. This last year, I've gotten back to doing review shows, going back to the original engine, and it feels so great, and the energy is so much better. Even though I do appreciate my other style, it's just that there was a lot, and that other style was not conducive to having guests. Because whenever I would have a guest on, the show would go from 40 minutes, 45 minutes to like an hour and a half, and it wasn't good. Because I specifically don't do it as reviews. I do them as page breakdowns. And so like I would go page to page. I call it page by page, panel by panel in excruciating detail. My thought process was, and feel free to whack out as much of this rambling as you want. It took these creators like a month to do this one issue, like hours and hours and hours spent on this one issue of comic. We can certainly spend 45 minutes, even on the worst comic book, breaking it down page by page.
Exploring the counterfactuals and trying to understand what were they going for.
Were they building this page to make a bigger scene? Was this page communicating with the next page? Was it communicating with the previous page? Those types of thoughts, that's what I really enjoy doing about that style of my show. Whereas I think pretty much every movie review, comic review, whatever show, they watch the movie, they listen to it, and then they give their thoughts on it. They're like, oh, track 6 was this, or this part of the movie slowed down for me. That's not what I was ever going for with that. It was really more about, let's give a clinical dissertation of what these books are. Sometimes I was more successful than others. At 155 issues, you're going to get some books that I'm just breezing through because I'm like, all right, this is normal. But then there's some stuff where you get through and I would find really, really cool ideas in a, we'll just say, mediocre issue. But you could see that the artist was pulling some artistic idea. Most of it would be about the art, really. Visuals and how are they executing this and was it successful and things like that.
Page turns and splash pages.
Yeah, versus like, did I like it? I guess at the end of the show, I'd be like, oh, I loved it. I thought it was great, but I love every issue.
Right.
I'm not here to stab Caesar. I'm here to understand why Caesar wears that funky headband with the leaves.
Why the laurels, Caesar? And plus, it's G.I. Joe. I mean, it's like pizza. Even when it's bad, it's still pretty good.
That's the thing, yeah. Like, I still love it. I don't like slagging on things. It's one of the reasons why I don't do new stuff.
I was going to circle back and ask you to share your thoughts on the Energon universe.
I love the Energon universe. I think it's great.
For the folks at home, that is a new line of G.I. Joe comics being published at the time of this recording that incorporates currently G.I. Joe and Transformers, and we're right on the cusp of them also including the 80s property Mask.
Yeah. A lot of that is like giving creators time to grow and to find their voice. This might be heretical.
Ooh, spill that tea.
Ta-Nehisi Coates, amazing writer. He had a really great run on Black Panther. His first few issues, I don't think were any good. So I bailed.
Wow, you tapped out.
I didn't find his voice as a comic book writer. I didn't think it was there. And he eventually figured it out because he's super, super talented. And his run on Black Panther is now revered and people love it. He's won every award. Like, he's great.
Well, you know, sometimes people just aren't a good fit. Por ejemplo, Chris Rock on SNL.
That's another great example. When Kevin Smith writes comic books, there's a cadence to his books that are different from other comic books on the stands.
I can only imagine how many word balloons must be on every page.
There's a ton there. If you don't understand that going in, you're going to be expecting something different. I think his Daredevil run's really good, but I think it takes a little bit to get going. So I don't love to review modern stuff because I like to give projects room to breathe.
You're not about the hot takes.
I don't need a hot take because also when someone comes up to me and like they walk out of Superman last year, which I loved, and they were like, that's my favorite movie of all time. I would look at that person as an unserious viewer. You need to let stuff bake in your person. And not everything requires the level of baking.
We could probably figure out on a first viewing that as much fun as it is to watch The Room, it's not an all-time great film.
Yeah, and maybe 10 years is too long, but I have like a 10-year rule that unless a movie's 10 years old, I'm embarrassed to be like, it's in my top whatever.
You take a more European approach, a more continental long-term view.
It's gotta have legs, man. And so with comic books being so individual, one issue is only 22 pages and then it's part of a larger story. With something that happens in this issue, like, I can't believe they killed Burr Burr Burr. Well, Burr 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 could be back next issue. But if I read it all in arrears and I look back and I go, a couple years ago they did this series and here's my take on it. They had their say. How did their say go? That's where I come in.
Those are two great reasons to avoid gut reactions and take a little time to process.
Which is antithetical to the entire concept of the internet. And that's why my social media numbers suck.
Well, you know, we don't live in an age of curation.
No, we really don't.
Not internally for ourselves and not for others. We have to be the arbiters and we have to go with our gut reaction and cannot allow ourselves time to process and think things over.
Yep.
A little curation these days would go a long way, I tells you.
Mm-hmm.
Circling back for a second, I'm going to ask you something that I should absolutely save for off mic because it is so granular, but sometimes would you read a comic character, then see him on the show and think, oh no, that's all wrong? Would you maybe even watch the show and think, I haven't even seen this character in the comic, but that just doesn't seem right for this person?
I don't have audio voices in my head when I read. I don't have Christian Bale's Batman voice in my head when I read Batman, or Adam West's, or Michael Keaton's. Sometimes you hear it and you know when it doesn't fit. You know it's a bad choice. Now, narrative voices, yes, absolutely have been like, that's out of character. That doesn't seem right. But then you have to go, well, it's being told by two different people in two different whatevers. There also weren't competing voices back then, though. There was one source of G.I. Joe. Like, the same guys voiced Optimus Prime forever until you get to Chris Hemsworth. And I thought he did a great job by just being his version of Optimus. Let me reframe that. Who's more iconic than cartoon Skeletor as far as voices go? Alan Oppenheimer. He kills it. I mean, everyone knows what Skeletor sounds like. In the movie, Frank Langella is great, and he's not doing an Alan Oppenheimer impersonation.
Not in the least.
Now, that did not sound like He-Man to me, but it was Dolph Lundgren, so you're like, well, what's Dolph Lundgren going to do? He's Drago. So I guess that would be the one where I was like, well, at least you got him visually. He absolutely nailed the look. Except for I do want to give him a page boy haircut. So yeah, I don't read with voices in my head. Actually, I do. They're all from Chicago. Every G.I. Joe member's from Chicago.
They're on their way to get a dog at a street cart.
Yeah, we're going to Wiener Circle next. I'm getting old style, and we're going to head into Wiener Circle. Look out.
And then watch those cubbies play.
Maybe get on the red line. Go see some Sox.
Not trying to provoke backlash or get you into any hot water here, but would you say that Larry Hama still has it?
Yeah, I totally do. He's written some really cool stuff recently. My favorite stuff that he's written outside of the whole Arashikage triangle, who murdered who drama. There's stuff that he's written that I think a lot of us have quietly been critical of. Like, they made Firefly a ninja.
Jeremiah brought that up.
It's the worst. I don't know whose idea it was, though, so I can't lay the blame at his feet. But if they did that just because he wore a ninja-like mask...
Is Beachhead also a ninja now?
Exactly. What are we doing here, people? I don't know whose idea that was, but he wrote it. But his best stuff are the short form adventure stories where he'd take a team and drop them somewhere and they have to get out of that. Those are really great. And he's been doing a few of those lately that are really just hitting the nail on the head.
Oh, great. And just to clarify, I'm not asking if the man is infallible. I'm just asking, you're not a G.I. Joe hipster, are you, Joe? Going, oh, you know, G.I. Joe's early work is where it was at, but they've really tapered off.
No, oh, absolutely not. He's still killing it. Again, this is sort of why I don't do the modern stuff, but there is a cadre of the bad guys that have been around for like 10 years now. And it sucks because at a certain point that becomes the norm. It's like an AI robotic entity and they're called Blue Ninjas.
Of course.
Oh my God. The worst.
Oh no.
I have not had this little interest in a bad guy since the Games Master on a cartoon, the jolly old fat guy that was basically Arcade from the X-Men books. These like Blue Ninjas, I think Revanche is the name of their organization.
Makes sense. Revanche is basically a military / governmental form of revenge against another country versus a person.
Oh, okay.
Germany's rise in World War II, it was feelings of we want revanche for what happened to us after World War I.
Right.
All the policies you put in place against us. Little aside for the audience.
He's built up this organization so you're not always going after Cobra. Sometimes you can just fight this other organization. I recognize all that stuff, but man, I've never heard anyone speak well of that. But they're still well written. He's the master of balancing pacing. That's really what I've always admired most about his work. Ideas come and go. Sometimes an idea someone may have may not hit, but if it's executed well, you at least can appreciate the art of the execution. And his art of execution has not lost his fastball. He has always balanced subplots in a classical Marvel way. I said Marvel way, but also Paul Levitz, who was a majorly a DC guy. I remember this was his thinking for working on a Legion of Superheroes.
I'm sorry, was he an editor or was he a writer?
Both. He was mostly a writer, but eventually was editor-in-chief over at DC. He'd be like, how do you balance all these stories in the Legion of Superheroes? And I'm pretty sure Larry follows this too, is you block out a certain number of pages at certain points in the book, and you just make sure to check in on those. And every issue that you get closer to that subplot being a major plot, you give them a couple more pages. If you're introducing a subplot that you're not going to get to for, say, 6 issues, you only give them a page, and that's it. But the next issue, they might get 2 pages. You're just constantly rotating in these new ideas into this ongoing, and we're talking about for ongoing comics, not necessarily a one-shot or graphic novel.
It's not a mini-series.
Yeah. We're talking about ongoing drama stuff. So the reader is just consistently getting this larger takeover of this new idea. As the main idea that you're currently in hits its crescendo, you cut back on the subplot and you give that main idea its own issue, or most of its own issue. But you've already given them like 22 pages over the course of 3 months, a full comic's worth of the subplot. You wrap up the current plot, and then the next issue is all that subplot. It just keeps you coming back for more, and it removes a lot of the Deus Ex Machina version of plot storytelling. When you wrap up a big issue, it's rewarding to the reader, but then they also know, wait a minute, on page 8, this other thing was going down with Destro and the Balkans. What was going on with that? So I got to come back next issue. They've been teasing that for 5 issues. Larry is an absolute master at that, and he still has not lost his fastball on that. If you buy indie comic books at trade shows, and there's super talents out there doing them, so this is not to say that they're not talented, but a lot of those ideas, they're ideas that someone had for a movie, but they're having trouble selling it. So they're like, I'm going to turn this into a comic book. But what they don't do is they don't repace it. Your storytelling structure, you've not revamped. You've still kept it in that 3-act movie script structure. And that doesn't work for comics. You know, comics need a little bit more action. They need a little bit more page turning. You need to understand every 22 issues, I need to have some type of resolution.
It doesn't have to be the Dukes of Hazzard, but you need some kind of cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Even if it's a subtle character beat.
Completely. I mean, Larry, I think he was part of the Krusty Bunker stuff with Neil Adams, but he was an assistant to Wally Wood, who is on my personal top 10 Mount Rushmore of comic creators. People in comics know him. Obviously, he's a huge name in comics, but not a lot of people outside know him because of the nature of his life. That's a whole different story.
As a casual, I know him.
Do you? Oh, great. You should. His stuff's amazing. But like, he came up through that school, and those were the masters. I was reading some recent stuff. I was reading I was reading some old stuff recently.
No, I think we're of that school, Joe, where when we say we're reading something recent, we mean from like the 20th century. Not old stuff like 1800s and before.
I was reading Eisner's Spirit work from 1948-49.
Practically yesterday.
His level of draftsmanship, oh my God. And then you actually compare him to his contemporaries at the time. He was outpacing everyone. His stuff was better than any Superman book at the time. There's layers and there's depth and shadow and storytelling in this stuff that he was making post-war that just blows you away. And you're like, oh, he must have did this in the 70s, right? No. He did the cover in the 70s. The interiors that you're gushing over, those were done 30 years prior. Comics are a wonderful world that I'm so happy that they're getting covered more. Obviously mainstream in the whole like Avengers and superheroes, but just in general, people are being made aware of the history of it.
Oh, it's a phenomenal medium with a huge variety. People say, why would you be interested in comics? Aren't they designed for kids? I'll actually take the stance that, yeah, they actually kind of were, but look at the effort that goes into it regardless. Walk into a store, grab a comic and flip through it. Do you not feel like you're walking through the Louvre?
Mm-hmm.
Is there really such a big difference between the principles on display, whether it's color theory, composition? Unlike classical art, they also have to balance things like this one panel might be great, but how do I balance that as one component of a page? And how do I tell a story panel to panel, which unless you're making a triptych or something in the 1500s, you didn't have to think about. So look at the skill on display, man.
Totally. And just like anything, some are more successful than others.
Absolutely.
There's a million painters and only one Monet. But the cream rises to the top, as the great macho man Randy Savage once said.
Yes. Speaking of greats. Back at Curious Goods, Jack morosely opines on his failure to save Dr. Rhodes, and although his brain tells him he can't blame himself for not doing things differently, his heart says otherwise. Well-meaning Ryan the Lion attempts to console him with banal platitudes such as,
How could any of us know? I mean, you do what you have to, or what you can. And if you're lucky, well, that's good enough.
"Man, I wish Jack replied with something like, Ryan, days after reuniting with my lost love, she was lobotomized by a haunted Trefinator. So unlucky, I would say." Instead, he acknowledges they were apart for most of their lives and sticks with his supernatural remit that she has simply, once again, traveled somewhere without him. That is very mature, Jack, and kind of beautiful. But the episode needs Mickey to add her 2 cents, and like Job's 3 friends, she almost scolds him for sulking, with the remonstration that he had his time with her and that he'll always have the memories. It's actually to Luis Roby's credit that these lines don't come across as cold as they could have. Fortunately, left alone, Jack, speaking to a photo of Dr. Rhodes on the inside of her book's dust jacket, steers the show back to poetry and pathos when he tells her that if she just waits a while, they might be together again someday soon. After he sets a small object on the desk and solemnly departs, we zoom in on her photo to find the open engagement ring box resting next to it. This would already be the best final shot of the series, but the fact the zoom is expertly timed to end just as the music crescendos, so the show can quickly fade out, is absolute perfection. And then Friday, you couldn't end on a classy low-angle still shot of the entire Trefinator, emphasizing its foreboding height and quasi-guillotine aspect for the credits to play over. No. You had to choose an abstract close-up of the needle arm, drawn back at an odd angle, ready to strike. You know, sometimes I think you want to fail. The other side of that coin is with someone like Larry Hama on the writing side. Yeah, I think we can safely say that G.I. Joe was intended to sell toys to kids. But despite that fact, the man created something that has relevance not only to his own time period, but to even today. It echoes through time.
He was a military veteran who had thoughts.
Exactly.
The very first issue, that comic book, technically it was a magazine. Yeah, no, it was a comic book, but it was built like a magazine, but it was printed comic book format. I'll argue on that. I don't think they were ready to do a number 2. They rescue a woman. She was a staunch, what they would call a peacenik. She was like, soldiers are a waste of money and military sucks and blah, 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 that point of view. And they were like, she's so ungrateful to us, blah, blah, blah. Hawk is talking to him. He's like, you know this woman, the media painted a pretty black picture of her, but inflammatory headlines help sell newspapers, right? Sherfew's like, are you trying to tell me she ain't no traitor? And Hawk says, well, we each took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States. That Constitution guarantees the right of every citizen to disagree with the government, including Jimmy Kimmel. Oh, no, Hawk didn't say that.
Editor's note.
Scarlet is speaking for Snake Eyes here. Snake Eyes is actually using sign language, which is very rare in the comic books. It's so funny.
Oh, interesting.
He knows sign language, but they're always like, Snake Eyes, we don't know what he's thinking. And I'm like, the dude knows sign language. Just someone else learned sign language.
He's not an ape.
Scarlet's like, Snake Eyes is signaling me that he wants to know, quote, how can the right of an individual compare to the safety of the entire world? Wouldn't a B-52 bombing raid solve this problem with less risk? And Hawk says, no, we're the good guys, remember? The island has a civilian population. Besides, it's not our job to judge Dr. Burkhart. Someone asks, what is our job? He says, we're soldiers. Our job is to do the unthinkable and then be forgotten.
Wow.
That's on page 12 of the very first issue of G.I. Joe, the comic book. And you're selling that to 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds. I mean, that's huge stuff. It's great.
That is seriously profound.
It's putting bigger thoughts into the heads of the youth that make them think about things. And that is all the more reason why I'm disappointed in any MAGA G.I. Joe fan out there. We learn nothing from all this great stuff.
Far more thought went into that statement than goes into the politics of either side. I'm really glad you took the time to dig that out, Joe, because that is fantastic. Well, this has been a great conclusion to another episode of the Joe on Joe podcast. I'll be happy to turn this over to you for your podcast.
And now you Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.
And I can't wait to come on the Joe on Joe podcast and discuss this episode of Friday the 13th, the series.
Let's do it. Let's totally do it. I've dressed the show up as other stuff, though. For Halloween one year, we went as Joe on Jem.
Oh, wow.
We just straight up reviewed an episode of Jem.
Just to bring it full circle, you like doing crossovers with Columbo and Star Wars Christmas specials, so we can do a Friday the 13th the series Joe on Joe podcast?
Oh, let's do it.
Mickey and Ryan and Jack Marshak interacting with the Joe team.
Robert, done. We'll absolutely do that.
I did it. I sold Joe in the room. That's my only goal in life.
Where do I sign?
Right here, kid. My thanks again to Joe for participating on this program. Lord knows the man keeps busy enough running the Joe on Joe podcast, so this goofity nonsense was the last thing he needed on his docket. And now I've got some exciting news to share with you all. Next episode of the podcast will be our 50th. To celebrate, friend of the show and former guest Laura will be returning to discuss Friday the 13th the series, episode 19, The Quilt of Hathor, which, as far as I can tell, is the first half of an epic 2-episode storyline. Yes, 90 minutes of network television dedicated to a haunted patchwork quilt. Truly the fates have conspired to bring us to the intersection of Madness Avenue and Delirium Boulevard. Best of all, said quilt is currently in the possession of a cult, and I can't wait to see how the topic of religion is handled. All that and who knows, maybe to celebrate I'll finally buy a microphone. The only way to find out is to join us then. Thanks for listening, everyone. We know you have a lot of options when choosing a Friday the 13th the series podcast, and we sincerely thank you for choosing ours. Special thanks to Joshua Romeo for original music and to Stephen Yu for original art. And be sure to check out the Joe on Joe podcast, the only podcast where Joe Slepsky discusses G.I. Joe. Jason is basically a zombie, and yet he couldn't be enticed by a brain under glass. If you want to support our show, you can leave a review and rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. If you want an occasional update on our projects, you can sign up for our newsletter at the Inner Demon Entertainment website. And if you want to complain about social media with us on social media, you can find links on our website. I guess we'll find out together if Friday handles religion any better than Asian culture. And always remember what Carl said to Frylock. It don't matter. None of this matters. Good night, everybody.